I'm very much from a business background, and I've spent pretty much all my life building up a large property business across the Midlands area. And I've been so despairing about how our government's been run for decades. This isn't just the Conservatives, the Labour government before that set the wheels in motion for the car crash that we have today. We have the highest taxes, Moma, since the Second World War. Families are being devastated. People are on the breadline. They're out there struggling and working their socks off to try and provide for themselves. Where's all this money going? It's going to a big, bloated state. Everywhere I look across all areas of government, I see waste heaped upon waste, and I despair for what's happened. We've become so polarised, haven't we? Left and right, and the shoutiness at each other. I think we should, have a broader outlook on things. I think it's healthy to explore new ideas and explore them in more detail. Everything's become about a soundbite now that's on Twitter or a headline to grab the 6 o'clock news with. We almost don't have any great thinkers anymore in politics. 20, 30, 40 years ago we had, on the left maybe Tony Benn you had, and Dennis Healy and Michael Foot, let's say. On the right maybe Margaret Thatcher, you maybe had people from the different spectrum, but almost in politics now, I see a lot of plastic politicians, there's no faults. I've met a lot of these people. Yeah, they can come up with a few sound bites, but I just question how deep a thinker they are. You mentioned Peter Hitchens. I read a lot of his articles. I don't agree with everything Peter says, but I admire a lot of his work, and he's not afraid to say controversial things.
There's weight behind his words, isn't it? Like there's experience and there's knowledge, and you can appreciate what he's saying.
Douglas Murray is another one, well worth listening to. The facts that he can come up with, and to demonstrate the power of his argument. But again, people on the left would never even listen to him because he's a fascist, he's a far right extreme. So it's very sad how we've descended into this. Then there's people. I'm talking to lots of ex-Labour supporters that are fed up with mass immigration. Mass immigration has caused the housing crisis. Kids can't get anywhere to rent because rents have been pushed up because of all these illegals, and 1.2 million people gross came to the country last year. 685 net. Where are these people all going to live? Of course it's going to push up rents and create massive demand for houses, which is pushing up prices. So these kids can't get anywhere to rent. Loads of Labour supporters can see that. They can see their wages are being suppressed because there's extra competition from foreign labour, so their wages are being suppressed. And all you're going to get with Labour is just more of the same. You'll probably even have an amnesty, which will just encourage you to keep coming. People are waking up. People can see this. And, up and down Derbyshire Dales, getting so much support. I think the polls, the mainstream media daren't even talk about this. Something seismic is going on in the ground, not just in Derbyshire Dales, but up and down the country.
Hello there everyone, welcome to the World of Momos podcast, and on today's episode of Reflections and Reactions we have a special guest with us. We have Edward Oakenfull, who is a reform candidate for Derbyshire Dales, I think so, but we'll ask him where he's standing from and about every different things, about Reform Party itself, about the political and media landscape in Britain right now, and whatever else might come up. So hi Ed, how are you?
Hi Momus, really good to meet you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's a very hot day today, isn't it?
It's lovely.
Very nice day. Lovely day. So
no doubt all the greenies will be saying that this is all due to climate change. Can't they just give it a rest and let us enjoy
win with them.
The nice days of sunshine?
You can't win with such sort of people. They'll always find a way to bring your mood down. They don't like happy people. So, I mean, before we start, what I used to do before was I used to introduce the guest myself, but I thought it doesn't really give the proper picture of the guests themselves. So it's good for the guests to give us a little bit of life story so that we get a picture from their own perspective. So tell us a brief life story of yourself and how you ended up with Reform.
I'm very much from a business background, and I spent pretty much all my life building up a large property business across the Midlands area. And I've been so despairing about how our government's been run for decades. This isn't just the Conservatives; the Labour government before that set the wheels in motion for the car crash that we have today. We have the highest taxes, Moma, since the Second World War. Families are being devastated. People are on the breadline that are out there struggling and working their socks off to try and provide for themselves. Where's all this money going? It's going to a big, bloated state. Everywhere I look across all areas of government, I see waste heaped upon waste, and I despair for what's happened. I think we can do a lot better for the people of this country. And that's why I've decided to put my head above the parapet and join a common sense approach party like Reform UK.
Yeah, I mean that is a problem, isn't it? Like, so where did you grew up, and like the things around you, like have you seen them change over the
Yeah.
time?
In our constituency, we have an MP that was parachuted in. She's from your part of the world, in Essex. I think she pretty much lives down there most of the time. She has a token house in the constituency, but she's pretty much hardly ever here.
Yeah.
So sad. I'm local. I was born in Derby City Hospital, not far from the constituency. I've lived pretty much all my 57 years in and around Derbyshire. Love the area, always out walking in the beautiful Peak District in the north of my constituency. It's such a beautiful constituency. A big shout out for the tourist industry. Anybody that's looking for a staycation, Derbyshire Dales is where you should be going to. Yeah, I've always been local, and I live.
You think that is important, right? So for anyone who's standing, like they should at least have lived there for 5 years, at least at the very minimum. But it would be better if they lived there for at least 10 years or whatever. They have residency over there, and they have a permanent residency over there. They have some family over there as well, perhaps. Just that there's something at stake, that this is where you live, this is where people around you know you, and if you do badly, then you will be taken badly by those people around you as well, because you should care about such things, that you're letting your neighbors down,
You
sort
should
of a
have
thing.
some connection to the constituency. When you see these people parachuted into safe constituencies, it's just very odd, really. I know probably people are going to say, "Oh, what about Richard Tice or whatever in Boston?" But there are exceptions. But I feel very strongly that I'm local. I know people in this area, so
Yeah,
it should be the
I mean,
basis.
obviously there will always be exceptions for like the leader of the party or the deputy leader of the party, and those people like that. But in majority, it should be the people who live in an area standing for that area. So what are the main issues that you see in your locality, in your area, and what do you think needs to happen to fix them?
My constituency is a very rural constituency, lots of farming communities, and they've been devastated, Momus. There's so much paperwork now. These people want to be out farming and producing food to feed our country, but they're almost not allowed to. There are lots of government agencies that sit in nice air-conditioned, centrally heated offices, producing more and more procedure guides and paperwork. And so much so, the farmers now are having to spend a day or two a week completing all these forms and ticking boxes to say they've done this, that, and the other. So much paperwork. Then there's maybe the market itself. It's a reform policy that the Commission and Markets Authority have a proper look at fair pricing within farming. Are farmers getting a fair price for their produce? There's also lots of young people that aren't going into farming that perhaps would like to go into farming. Reform want to incentivise apprenticeships. There's also the whole taxation system. Reform want to any corporation, the first £100,000 to have no corporation tax whatsoever. On the income side of it, the first £20,000, again, no tax to pay whatsoever. We want to keep the small and medium-sized businesses. We don't want them put out of business and these big global corporations swoop in, buy up all the land, and put all these people out of business.
I mean, this is one of the policies that attracted me to Reform Party way earlier as well, about the tax allowance being raised to £20,000. Um, and people have said like negative things about it as well. Like I understand people would have their opinions. Even if we aiming for 20,000 and it gets settled at, let's say, 16,000 or 18,000, it still makes a huge difference, because um your basic needs are met. Actually, you can pay your rent without having to worry about those sort of things. Those things are met, and then when you want to achieve more, then you sort of go for more. But do you
It's a
think that has
one
to be
and
do you
in
think
the
that
pay
has to be?
packet. In the pay
Sorry.
packet, sorry,
Yeah.
in the pay packet is £1,500
Yeah.
bonus to everybody that's
Hmm.
out there working. That families, for instance, my own situation, when I was younger with my wife, we wanted more children, but we couldn't afford it. We took the responsible decision. We can't afford it. We're not going to have any more children. We would love to have done. But if you give everybody a £1,500 a year pay rise, that will allow people to have more children if they so want to. They perhaps won't have to pay childminders. Maybe the husband or the wife or the female partner, whatever, can stay at home and look after the children, which I think is more beneficial.
Yeah.
I'm sure I'm not being too controversial by saying that, which you've got to watch yourself this in this day and age. There's also the net zero policies, Momus, that are making, on our gas and electricity bills, they're loaded with extra taxes, extra green taxes, so that are subsidising solar farms and wind farms. It's a reform policy to abolish those. That would be £500 a year bonus to every family out there. So there's a lot of things you can
do you think, like, especially with the tax allowance, that it has to be matched with, or other things has to be done alongside it, parallel to it, that being the reforming the benefit system, so that people are not taking the mickey out of this allowance that has been given, and willingly not working more when they should be, and also along with immigration, because what the negative comments that people usually make about the tax allowances. Well, who is allowed to have more babies and sort of stuff like that? Who is going, like, is it going to the British people, or are we benefiting other people? Well, if we say we can't just do one thing in isolation, when you're in governance you have to do multiple things at the same time. So if you're giving tax breaks to everyone who is British, every Brit, and also making sure that we are not getting the wrong sort of immigration, we're not getting the illegal immigrants in, we're not spending money on that, and we're only having skill-based immigration, along with the fact that we reform the benefit system, then it makes sense, right? The whole package. But on its own, like, obviously it doesn't make sense, but along with the whole package, it does.
I think it's a scandal. Illegal immigrants being put into hotels. The amount of money, depending on which assessment you look at, 5, 7, 8 million pounds a day is being spent on this. And what is happening? A lot of these people are now being moved out of hotels into private rented accommodation. There's a massive shortage. I'm sure where you are as well, where we are, massive shortage of rental properties. So what is the idea of moving people out of hotels that are illegal, they shouldn't even be here, into private rented accommodation? It's all to try and hide the figures that the government is spending, keeping all these people, so that they can trumpet how much money they've saved, and they're not spending £8 million on hotels anymore. They're only spending £3 million. But the truth is they're spending another £5-10 million or whatever on private rented, with gold-plated deals for landlords. I've heard from landlords that have had 5-year lease agreements with Serco, a government agency, all paid for by taxpayers. They'll a full insuring and repairing lease and guaranteed rent for 5 years over and above the market rent. So again, you're forcing. So the few rental properties that are about, for British people, they're getting increasingly scarce because government is unable to deal with.
Why is it so hard? Why is it so hard advocating for things, better things for British people? why has it become a taboo? Why when we talk about illegal immigration, that we are labeled as racist? Like, it doesn't matter about your nationality, your skin color, or whatever. If you're an illegal immigrant, you're an illegal immigrant, right? So it could be anyone from anywhere. Even if an American was trying to come in illegally, they would be an illegal immigrant, and we should deal with them accordingly, right? So but they try to label it as people are being xenophobic, people are being racist, people are being bigoted. Well, we just want what's best for our country and for the people who belong here, who are of here, right? So I don't understand why a government who would call itself conservative, or a government who call itself the advocate of working class people, would want to disadvantage their own people for this some you know these other people. Like, it doesn't make sense to me, and it's harming us, like, because we are paying so much for, and we the more that we pay, the more that we encouraging people to continue acting in this way.
It's never
Like, we're
going
not
to stop.
discouraging. Why
Mass
would it?
immigration is never going to stop if they're
Hmm.
fully incentivized, if they're given all the welfare in the world, they're given legal aid. And most British people don't qualify for legal aid. So why should somebody picked up off the coast of France and brought to this country qualify for amazing barrister and legal advice? I'm absolutely staggered. These are
Yeah.
all the reasons, Momus, I had to get involved and try and
Yeah.
change things.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen with a lot of other reform candidates as well. It's people who were happily living their lives, doing their business or whatever, and they've just been pushed to that point. And I see that actually because I'm a member of SDP, so I see that a lot with the SDP people as well, because they're almost all of them are like very decent people, and they've just been pushed to a point where they're like, well, I have to get involved because it's a matter of the future for my children. Like, I can't leave them this country in this state. And what we see in the liberal elites of labor and conservative, they're not concerned about that, because they are leaving their kids in a good state anyways, because they are all well off. So they don't concern themselves with these things, do they?
No. I've been to several hustings and beautiful chocolate box villages, but it's lots of very wealthy people that work for the public sector that are telling me how much refugees are welcome. But the reality is they don't see the effects of mass immigration. They don't see how our inner cities now have become battlegrounds of different groups. They don't see the crime. They live in a beautiful chocolate box area. They virtue signal. They pretend how good and kind they are. But if any of this, if a migrant camp was decided to be built on next to their beautiful village, they would be up in arms. So some of these people are the biggest hypocrites going.
Yeah, I mean, we see that actually example when it happened in America, when a lot of illegal immigrants were coming, and I think so it was the state of Texas. They put them on the vineyard, and all of those people started squirming them as soon as that happened.
Yeah.
Right? Is that same effect, isn't it? Because they're so detached. It's like you don't know how the sausage is made, so you're happy eating the sausage and advocating for it. But once you know how it's made, you're like, oh, okay, it's that detachment from the process that
I find that hilarious. That Martha's Vineyard, when they bust them there, and those sanctuary cities in New York and Chicago bragging about no refugee would be unwelcome and would be given a home. Now they're seeing the results of this. They're flooded by mass immigration, and it's costing the cities billions, and everybody that isn't going to hang around and be taxed. So they're all moving out, and these areas are becoming really depressed areas now.
I mean, so that brings me to that point of what I wanted to talk to you about. So what's happening with us not being able to have conversations, and the political and media landscape that is being created. Now, I don't actually want to talk about what media
Can I
did
just
to you.
interject there?
Yeah, sure.
There's also, in the recent days, there's been this furore about Nigel Farage. So in a way, all he was doing was stating the obvious, that if NATO kept expanding eastwards, it's going to put pressure on Russia, and Russia's going to retaliate, and maybe that is a factor in the Ukraine war. No, but Farage wasn't saying that the war is a great thing and that he wasn't supporting Putin. But
Yeah.
these forces on the media really went for the jugular and tried to make out he was a great friend of Putin's and a supporter. This is a horrible war. We want to end this war, but just for stating facts now, how a sentence can be taken out of context and used by the media to blacken your character. It is truly astounding that we've got to this stage.
It's stopping people from having conversations because you're dictating what is a good conversation and a bad conversation before the conversation has even taken place, right? So even if someone disagreed with what Farage was saying, you can agree and disagree with it, of what the history is that led up to that point, who was the aggressor, who wasn't the aggressor, what conditions were created, because these are not simple things. It's not just simply like, this happened, so there's the consequences of it. But to say that because he's approaching a point of view in some way, that all of a sudden he's pro-Putin, like that's just being disingenuous, like, that's doing it, that the media is no longer reporting facts or interested in facts. They're just propaganda from one political side to the other political
This
side.
is it, it's propaganda. BBC, I just see so many biased reports. Again, it's just brainwashing people. And it all going full circle again now. The mass immigration.
Yeah.
We can't almost have a grown-up conversation about it without name-calling and racism, far right. It just seems so crazy. It's like an Overton window. There's things that you can discuss and things that you can't. And if you're slightly to the left or right of the Overton window, you can't even have a debate on these things anymore, which we need to. Western civilization is under a massive threat from this, and we need to be discussing these issues as a society.
Yeah, and like as I was saying, like I wasn't even interested in talking about what the media did to you as well, and what the Twitter space did to you as well, because for me it was such a non-story that it wasn't even interesting to me. It's like, well, you're taking it out of context. I can see you're taking it out of context, and if you didn't take it out of the context, I would agree with whatever Ed was saying, because I have said those same things as well. So does it make me what you're blaming him to be? It's just ridiculous. But I've seen
Twitter is almost a manna from heaven for journalists. They can there's almost AI bots. They can do searches on every bit of your social media and look for any keywords and bring up anything from. I've seen reform candidates that they've dragged stuff up from 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Surely, we all grow up, we change our opinions. We had different opinions 10 years ago. So again, I find historical searches of people, I find that really sinister, and using that to try and cancel people.
Yeah, I mean, you have to see the people's actions now as well. Like, you have to compare and contrast rather than just. It's a very communist way of doing things, isn't it? There is no forgiveness. There is no salvation.
This is communism. This is what happened in East Germany. This is what happens in China.
Yeah. And this is what happens within Islam as well, Islamist countries as well. Because I've grown up with this, so I can viscerally understand it, and I'm repulsed by it because of that reason. But I've also seen like people especially in these elections being overly emotional. So what I did on my podcast recently was I was running a thought experiment. So I made a video just of myself, why you should vote reform, and then the next day I made a video why you should not vote reform, right? So I was like, presenting both sides of the argument doesn't necessarily mean I believe in it, but to be able to present the argument, you have to believe in it to an extent, right? What I found was that when I did the why you should vote reform, I was hit by a lot of people who were anti-reform, and they only saw the thumbnail. They didn't listen to the video, and they started spamming comments over there. When I did why you shouldn't vote reform, I had the same reaction. The people who were pro-reform but only went through the thumbnail, and the picture was of Starmer with the pro pro-apocalypse London behind him. So it was pretty obvious what I'm trying to say, right? uh, they bombarded with comments, negative comments of like, how I'm not British if I'm not supporting reform and all those sort of things. It's like, well, listen to the video. In the first minute, I'm saying I don't agree with this argument. This is presented by Hitchens that we should vote for Tory party because to keep Labour out. I'm just presenting the argument, but it sort of made me feel very dejected for the next few days, because I was like, oh, what, we have become so emotional on either side of the argument that there's no room for debate. There's no room for exploring ideas. If we're going to be trapped in the bubble, it's not good for either reform or non-reform, whatever. It's not good to be trapped in bubble like that. Do you find the people's emotions are really heightened right now? It's not their fault, maybe. Like, it's a situation that has been created for them.
We've become so polarised, haven't we? Left
Mm.
and right, and the shoutiness at each other. I think I love to read The Guardian and look at articles there. I do like to read lots of left-wing publications, Novara Media. I don't want to put a shout out for them, but I will watch the videos, and it's just interesting to see where people are coming from. And I look at all sorts of media as well and I think we should, have a broader outlook on things. I think it's healthy to explore new ideas and explore them in more detail. You hit the nail on the head. I think everything's become about a soundbite now that's on Twitter or a headline to grab the 6 o'clock news with. We almost don't have any great thinkers anymore in politics. 20, 30, 40 years ago, we had on the left maybe Tony Benn you had, and Dennis Healey and Michael Foot, let's say. On the right, maybe Margaret Thatcher. You maybe had Norman other people from the different spectrum. But almost in politics now, I see a lot of plastic politicians that there's no faults. I've met a lot of these people. Yeah, they can come up with a few sound bites, but I just question how deep a thinker they are. You mentioned Peter Hitchens. I read a lot of his articles. I don't agree with everything Peter says, but I admire a lot of his work, and he's not afraid to say controversial things.
There's weight behind his words, isn't it? Like there's experience and there's knowledge, and you can appreciate what he's saying there.
Douglas Murray is another one, well worth listening to. The facts that he can come up with, and to demonstrate the power of his argument. But again, people on the left would never even listen to him because he's a fascist, he's a far right extreme. So it's very sad how we've descended into this.
It kind of reminded me just now of something that my mother said like a long time ago. What happened with her? My mom used to be a journalist in Kuwait and used to write for Pakistani newspapers as well. And my granddad used to be a journalist as well. And when she had us, my older sister, she was still working as a journalist. But when she had me in this, she had 2 kids, so she put a stop to her job for a while, paused it. And then when we grew up, she wanted to resume. But at that time, we were in Pakistan and not living in Kuwait anymore. So she approached, I think so, one of the newspapers, I'm forgetting their name, one of the bigger newspapers that I want to write articles and stuff like that for you guys. And they asked her, okay, yeah, we would love to have you because we know who you are and stuff like that. But you have to pick a political party. And she was like, well, what do you mean? It's like you have to write from the perspective of you have to choose a political side. She's like, but am I not supposed to be a journalist? I'm supposed to be an observer of things and give opinions and facts. They said no. And this is like in late 90s and early 2000s. And this is the reason why she never went back to journalism. She's like, no, like this is propaganda. This is different from journalism. And I see now that is, people don't even think about that. They just do it instinctively. That they're not a journalist, they're a journalist second, but they are political propagandist first.
Yeah.
And it's very sad to see, because the profession of journalism used to be very respectful, used to be one of those where people used to die for it, like die for the truth sort of a thing. I will hold the line, I will tell the truth against the that's just thing of the past, isn't it now?
But I'm optimistic, Momos. I think it's
Mm.
changed. I think with the internet, it's creating
Mm,
whole
mm,
new mediums for people. Um, people like yourself that are emerging, and your growing YouTube channel is just other voices. And I think people are not fixed on the mainstream media anymore, especially the younger people. They are. I just set up a TikTok channel and 100,000 people already, and most of those will be young people. So people
mm.
are looking for other forms of medium, and it's evolving all the time. Um, I'm optimistic that
But it's definitely not with the mainstream anymore, because the mainstream is, yeah, it's already chosen sides, and
yeah.
it depends on who funds you more than anything else,
I look
isn't
at
it?
like Mayor Tusi, for instance, the
Hmm.
growth
Hmm.
of his channel, which is just pretty phenomenal, and probably more people watch that than BBC News at 6, maybe. It's incredible. So
So in your locality, who else is standing alongside
I'm
you?
sorry to be plugging all these other, but they just come into the conversation. So yeah,
Yeah, no,
yours
it's
is
all
a
right.
great
No,
YouTube
go
channel.
ahead. They're
Everybody out
good
there should
people.
watch
So
Momus.
yeah.
Sorry, your question, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah, in your locality, who else is standing against you or sort
Yeah.
of alongside you?
All the main tired old parties with their tired old platitudes. I've been to these hustings, and
Hmm.
it's just same old, same old. We've got a Green candidate as well. We've got two independents as well. Nice
Hmm.
people, genuinely want to change things
Hmm.
and get their message out. I fully respect that. So yeah, we've got 7 candidates in all.
Hmm. What do you think reforms and your chances are? Like, are people more receptive to you than other people, or are they set in their ways and not really concerned about politics and more tribal? Because that's what I find in a lot of places.
I'm going to let you into a secret here, Momus,
Hmm.
and we've got to keep it to ourselves. This, I'm sure maybe our viewers, but I'm quietly confident. In Derbyshire Dales, it's a massive Tory stronghold. The
Hmm.
existing MP is a Conservative. She had a 17,000 majority at the last election. Up and down Derbyshire Dales, I've been so active in getting out and meeting hundreds and hundreds of people over the last few weeks, maybe 1,000 people.
Hmm.
And I know I'm biased, but so many people have been coming to me and saying, Edward, I just can't vote for these Conservatives anymore. They're
Hmm.
not Conservative in any way, shape, or form. I can't
Yeah.
think of the last Conservative policy they put through. And yeah, they might promise the jam tomorrow now that they're coming up with tax cuts and inheritance tax cuts. They always do that before every election. Does anybody believe any of that nonsense anymore? Then there's people. I'm talking to lots of ex-Labour supporters that are fed up with mass immigration.
Hmm.
Mass immigration has caused the housing crisis. Kids can't get anywhere to rent because rents have been pushed up because of all these illegals, and the 1.2 million people gross came to the country last
Yeah.
year,
Ridiculous.
685 net. Where are these
Hmm.
people all going to live? Of course, it's going to push up rents and create massive demand for houses, which is pushing up prices. So these kids can't get anywhere to rent. Loads of Labour supporters can see that. They can see their wages are being suppressed because there's extra competition
Hmm.
from foreign labour, so their wages are being suppressed. So, and all you're going to get with Labour is just yet more of the same. You'll probably even have an amnesty, which will just encourage yet
Hmm.
more to keep coming. People are waking up. People can see this, and up and down Derbyshire Dales, getting so much support. I think the polls, the mainstream media daren't even talk about this. Something seismic is going on the ground,
Hmm.
not just in Derbyshire Dales, but up and down the country.
No, I see that within Essex as well, because Essex is a very it's a Tory stronghold, has been for a while, and whoever I meet, they're just fed up of the Tories. Even though our MP, like in Malden, is someone who has been there since the 90s, I think so, 1994 or 97, something like that, and he's always voted in. He's always been here. Um, but people are fed up. Even people over here are saying, no, we're going to vote reform, because
Yeah.
there's nobody else. They're not speaking up. And I think so the Tory brand damaged itself during COVID times, because they acted out as a labor government would. and that sort of warned people. It's like, well, our freedoms are actually not protected under this
With
government.
that, we had Rishi Sunak as Chancellor at the time, churning out loads of money, the furlough scheme. Labour wanted to lock us down even longer. Labour wanted to
Yeah,
be even more generous with the furlough scheme. That
yeah.
added another £1 trillion to national debt. These have all
Mm,
got to be. It's all got to be paid for. And we're going to our grandchildren are going to be paying off this.
mm,
I signed a thing halfway through called the Great Barrington Declaration.
yeah,
Lots
yeah.
of eminent scientists and
Mm,
politicians worldwide signed this to say that the fit and healthy people should be out there going about
mm,
it, keeping the economy going, keeping employment, keeping in employment, and children should be allowed to go to school. They were very, very low risk. We never followed the science, so the whole
mm,
debacle of that.
yeah.
Yeah, Labour wanted to do it even harder and longer. I mean,
Yeah, I
people
mean,
got
and
such
it's
short
something
memories.
that something that I've not still not forgiven them for or will do is the loss of so many care workers, around 60,000 or so. Nobody even seems to talk about it. Like, people are more concerned about NHS, and when it came to NHS, that whole thing came crumbling down about mandatory vaccinations. But when it was care workers, who are the ones who are doing a lot of work for very minimal wage, 60,000 of them, or almost 60,000 of them, had to leave their jobs because they were forced to take vaccinations. Some of the care workers have also died because of vaccine injuries. But it's these sort of things that showed people that this Tory government doesn't really think. When it comes down to it, when there's some problem, some trouble, something, the working class people are going to be thrown in the fire. They won't care.
The waste and corruption.
Hmm.
Only today, Momus, I'm reading about £1.4 billion of PPE equipment
Yeah.
being burnt and destroyed and written
Yeah.
off. Why isn't that 1.1 billion is 1,000 million? I mean, these are staggering sums of money, but it's the taxpayers' money, so nobody seems to
Yeah.
care in government. I
And it
think
was their
extra
own
roll for
friends
things like
companies,
this.
wasn't it? Like, they had their own friends companies who were doing the contract out.
Yeah,
It was
it's a
just so
scandal.
open cronyism,
Yeah,
that it's just like it was so obvious what they were doing. They
yeah.
didn't care. They just wanted to make as much money as possible and then go off. And that's what it seems like now as well, by
But
having
where is
Rishi
the
Sunak on.
accountability? Where are these people? They should be hauled up, put on trial. I think for
Yeah.
corruption and misappropriation of public funds. But they almost seem to get away with it. Some of them are even given knighthoods. I mean, Sir
Hmm.
Ed Davey, the head of the Liberal Democrats. If I was in charge of the post office, as when he
Hmm.
was in charge of the post office, all those files of people going to prison under my watch, you'd have to resign.
Yeah.
Have they no shame? These people.
No, they don't. That's the thing. They don't. Look at Tony Blair getting the highest honor in the country. Like, he is his disasters that have led us to where we are. But it just seems like they get away with it, and we have to break this
Crazy wars
duopoly.
in North Africa, Libya, Middle
Yeah,
East. I mean,
nobody cares about those things because they're out of sight, out of mind, and we have to break this duopoly. Like, I don't care if people agree with Reform Party or not. Obviously, I don't fully agree with everything. That's why I keep criticizing and stuff. But the whole point of criticizing also is that I want them to do better. So there's that as well, which people need to understand and stop attacking me
I
sometimes on
think this
social
is a
media.
historic moment, and this is a
Yeah.
real chance to break this duopoly of
Mm,
just swinging backwards and forwards from Labour to the Conservatives.
yeah.
Um, this is a massive. This could be a massive moment in our
Yeah.
history.
And it sort of gives us the chance for 2029, because it brings a belief in people, right? Even people, like, let's say, for SDP, who wouldn't vote for SDP because they were like, oh, well, Labour is always going to win. We actually need SDP. Even if you're a reform supporter, you need SDP because you need the other side of argument to debate with, another side which is actually sensible, debating with whom you can actually learn from it. And that back and forth, you need a proper left for a proper right to be there, but a sensible, patriotic left that doesn't want to destroy the country. And
It's healthy
SDP
for
is there to
democracy.
take away the Labour strongholds.
Healthy for democracy, isn't it?
Hmm.
But another point, it all goes back to the first past the post system, this archaic
Mm.
system of electing a government in our country. We're the only country, apart from Belarus, that has this first past the post system. So
Mm.
to be aligned with Belarus, it just seems, what the hell? Proportional representation, so that parties
Yeah.
like the SDP can gain a lot more traction quicker, and Reform can also gain a lot more
Which
MPs.
reminds me of this something else, unrelated, but it just reminded me of it. Do you think these attacks on Farage by media over these Putin comments, the Russia and Ukraine comments, do you think it's because he's someone who doesn't want to go to war, while Tories and Labour both actually do want to go to war?
God, it's just terrifying, isn't it?
Yeah,
War, that's the last thing
it
we
just
want. I
seems
mean,
like it, they want to, doesn't it?
I was thinking, all the people, war will just be devastating. There may be factions within the Labour Party, the Conservatives, that want to go to war, but I genuinely don't believe that the majority do. I would hope not, anyway.
Mm.
But no, I think it's just a hit job on Farage. I think the establishment is incredibly powerful and entrenched in our country. The
Mm.
civil service, the judiciary, the mainstream media, and even the House of Commons itself has got maybe massive, massive vested interests that are being thrown at Farage to discredit him, so that Reform don't gain many MPs in the next election. But I think it's backfiring. I think that all this publicity is getting, people can see through it and realise that Farage is actually just speaking the truth. He's being demonised.
Yeah.
And it happened to the Labour Party. I was reading that in 1924, they had a weak Labour government. It was a minority Labour government, so they had to go for a second general election later in the year. The Daily Mail at the time produced a letter from the Russian Communist Party saying it was aligning itself with the Labour Party back in 1924. And it was proved to be a fake letter afterwards, but it's been around since
Yeah.
in the last 100 years. These sort of these fake news stories to discredit people. Donald
Yeah.
Trump in America. I mean, how many times has he had to stand in court and prove himself that he hasn't colluded with the Russians? I mean, off the scale.
Yeah, it is ridiculous. What I usually say is, people don't pay attention to local democracy, and it's really time that we push for local democracy and tell people to vote, because we can't have a turnout of 30% and say that local democracy actually works. But one of the criticisms that I had of Reform Party is that we didn't have any reform candidates in local governments, like not that many, especially in Essex and stuff. Is that something that Reform is very much aware of, and is that something that Reform intends to change going up to the next local elections? Because people actually wanted candidates for the local councils from Reform, and it just seemed like a missed opportunity.
Great question. We've got a 5-year plan with this. Everybody in my constituency, as soon as the local authority elections come round, the district council elections come round, we will be standing Reform candidates in every single constituency. A year ago, when we had local authority elections in our area, anyway, I'm sure you did as well, we just didn't have the people on the ground. We had no infrastructure. We're such a new party. I've only been at this a year now, from pretty much a blank piece of paper 12 months ago. And, in that time, I've got 100 people now up and down my constituency out delivering leaflets. The goodwill and the is so humbling that people are committing their time. Donations are coming in now as well. And again, I'm humbled that people are parting with hard-earned money to help me with my campaign. We have an infrastructure now where I am. And I would, in other areas that may not be the case, but we will do. Within the next 5 years, we will have lots of district councillors. We will be able to build this thing up from the foundations.
Because the reason why I usually say that as well is because you can have all the MPs that you want, but if you don't have the connection with the local councillors, your will not get into governance. There will be a blockage in every single level. And if we want to get rid of this non-impartiality that has crept in into civil service and local government and police and fire brigade, all the public departments, that will be done through local democracy.
Yeah.
Within the parliament, within the House of Commons, you can put in laws, but to action those laws, you have to have that local democracy. That's why I keep on saying to everyone, like, please go out and vote. It's very important, because those who are against the West, they are very much motivated, they are very much organized, and they do use our own systems against us, so they do go out and vote. So it's
People are
important that we
waking up,
do.
People are waking up. When George Galloway won in Rochdale, and he gets up and say, "I did this for Gaza."
Mm.
This is one of the most poorest constituencies in the country, Rochdale. And what about his own local people that he's just been elected to represent? Those Green candidates in Leeds, Alo Akbar did this for Gaza. What? And this is sectarian politics. People voting on religious grounds. That's with us now and will be. So yeah, we people have got to wake up, get out there and vote, and get people, SDP, reform candidates elected for district councils, so that things can change on the ground where they are.
Yeah, and it's scary because I am genuinely scared about the labor government. If a labor government, not just a labor government, but labor government in high majority. Because let's say labor government comes in, which seems very likely, but there's a good opposition and reform. We have a lot of seats, which means labor doesn't have a running majority. Then a lot of legislations that they might try to put in can be blocked, like the things about Islamophobia that they started talking about. And that really that really scared me, because as an ex-Muslim, it's sort of like, well, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to make it impossible for Jews and ex-Muslims and all sensible people to live in this country anymore?
Yeah.
Are we going to have these blasphemy laws now? Because this is what I escaped from 14 years ago. And it's sort of like, well, it makes you feel like, have I wasted 14 years of my life? I thought this country was Britain, but it wasn't like a member of CCP or something. What is happening? So that generally scares me. That's why I'm telling people, like, no matter what, don't feel dejected. Go out and vote, at least.
It's really scary. I think you will get blasphemy laws with the Labour Party. They'll be dressed up as hate speech, and you won't be able to criticise any religion. And if you do, you'll have a knock at the door. The police will be around with your non-crime hate incidents. And maybe they'll put even more draconian penalties on that, and maybe there'll be prison sentence. I don't know, but I can see that coming. The flourishing of Sharia courts and things like this, it's just a creep. People need to wake up with what is happening to our country now. We are becoming a disunited kingdom rather than a united kingdom.
Yeah, and there's so many things that unites us. It's actually very easy to bring people together in this country, because there's a history of people being together in this country, but we're creating this hatred amongst each other unnecessarily.
Some of the equality, diversity and inclusion laws, they sound lovely and fluffy and everything else, but you're protecting certain minorities and elevating minorities. The police know that they're protected minorities, so in a way you're giving them carte blanche to commit crimes and do what they want. And it should be call me old-fashioned, but I just think it should be the content of somebody's character, the best person for the job, rather than voting on colour of skin or sexuality. What on earth? We're going so wrong as a society now. So we need to really row back on this. And
I mean, the DEI policies are really damaging for the whole country. I have always thought merit is king, and that always wins. If you are doing programs like DEI, and if I find out that I have been given a job because of such a program, I would be actually really angry, because I want to get there on my own ability, on my own skills, and on my own merit, not being given a leg up when I shouldn't have been. Like, yeah, there's instances where people need a bit of help and they've been in disadvantaged positions and stuff. So you can create an opportunity for them so they can grab that opportunity, but not give it to them. When you give it to them, you're telling people you don't have to work hard. There's no reason to work hard.
Yeah.
Just because you're a certain color of the skin, we'll give it to you anyways.
Yeah.
So what's the point of doing good on once you get the job? No one can get rid of you because you can just claim that that person is being discriminatory,
Yeah.
right? What kind of society are we building with this? So no, this is why I want people to vote Reform or SDP or whatever, who wants to get rid of these things and go back to certain old-fashioned traditional values that brings about a sense of fairness
Yeah.
back into this
And
country.
also, Momus, if you're slogging your guts out within your company, within your local authority, doing a really good job, and then other people are being promoted because of skin color or sexuality is another one.
Yeah.
It must be such a slap in the face. So why bother? And then you just then work becomes somewhere to just go in the daytime and you get your paycheck at the end of the week. We are hollowing out our society. We are certainly taking a wrong turning as a Western civilization by implementing these policies. I think it's crazy.
Yeah. But no, like, thank you for being on. I've taken up a lot of your time, and these are many of the reasons and many other reasons as well why people should vote for Reform. As I've said before as well, Reform right now is our best chance of breaking through to this duopoly. Doesn't matter whether you agree with Reform or not, vote for someone else in 2029. But what happens in 2024 will break the grounds of what can be possible in 2029. So if you are a SDP member like myself and you want to vote for SDP, well, once you have a Reform party who breaks through that, it will make it easier for an SDP member to come in the parliament in 2029. So keep those things in mind, and thank you so much for being on, and I hope it was a good conversation for you as it was for me.
Absolute pleasure, Momus. And I think you should stand as well. You're such an eloquent speaker. I think you'd be an ideal candidate.
Yeah, my wife doesn't agree.
Oh, come on. No, you've been too modest.
Thank you so much, and thank you everyone for listening. I'll catch you next time.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.